Well, I'm looking to make this a city that every person chooses, whether they're a business leader or they're someone who works for that business. And the key ways of doing that are actually delivering quality of life, public safety, and affordability for each and every person.
You just heard Zohran Mandani there making his pitch for New York City Mayor. Republican Representative of New York, Claudia Tenney, joining us to discuss. We appreciate you joining us tonight on the National News Desk. First of all, the Mamdani campaign indicates they want to do what is best to help the people of New York City. You just heard. Obviously, you see it a bit differently, though.
Well, everybody wants to do what's best for New York City. It's how you get there. And communism is a failed solution. It's not the case. I've lived in a communist country. And he sounds like a snake oil salesman. He couldn't answer a single question from what I heard watching parts of the interview with Martha McCallum on Fox News. He tells people what he thinks they want to hear. He talks about, meeting with the police and how we've laid people off and there's not retention, and yet he's going to keep the levels the same. The reason there's no retention is because his biggest supporter, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, started the defund and demoralize the police movement that has led to all the problems we're seeing in New York City, and continues this and continues to support her. And then he supports lawlessness and actually had corrupt Letitia James show up at his recent headliner event. I mean, how could you do this? I mean, Letitia James is the worst attorney general that I could possibly imagine. I'm a lawyer. My father was a judge in New York State for 35 years. He served honorably. I have never seen someone abuse power and engage in malicious prosecution like she has. And it's not just Trump. Forget about Trump. It's all kinds of other people all across New York State, whether it's terrorizing the police, going after my friend who was a county executive in Rensselaer County on phony charges, Steve McLaughlin, who got completely vindicated by a jury in about 5 minutes, making up fake charges, running her campaign saying, I'm going to take Trump out. I'm going to go after him, making up charges and then getting thumped by the Supreme Court and courts that said this is not an appropriate case.
You mentioned several people. Obviously, we want to get to AOC in just a moment because I know that you are part of, obviously, the same delegation here in New York. The president just yesterday, though, threatened to withhold federal funding if this race goes to Mamdani. So first, I just want to play part of those statements.
And I'm very generous, and I was always very generous with New York, even when you had opposition there, but I was always very generous. But I wouldn't be generous to a communist, a guy that's going to take the money and throw it out the window, because you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. And we're not going to let somebody get into office and squander the taxpayer money from this country. We're not going to let it happen.
So you heard the comments, Representative, earlier today, Mamdani, during that interview, speaking, a lot about taxpayers and how this is going to affect the American taxpayer. Do you think the voters, though, of New York are clearly aware of the president's intentions and what could be the impact to voters of your state if Trump does withhold that money?
I think the taxpayers should be more afraid of a communist who wants to go in and double and triple taxes, try to turn a capitalist system, the United States' largest city and the most important economic city when it comes to New York State, and to turn it around into a communist, hellhole. You're going to have people leaving the city in droves, not paying taxes. Taxes are going to go up. Resources are going to go down. What Trump's saying is don't continue to put in these communist policies in place where you're going to bilk the taxpayers. We already have seen mass outmigration in our state. We have the highest outmigration of any state in the nation. Remember, in the 60s, we had 45 congressional seats. We are down to 26, and we're going to lose even more in the next round of redistricting because of the far left policies, the communist, socialist, Marxist policies of people like Mamdani, the Democrat Socialists of America. They're destroying our state bit by bit. I'm from upstate. We have felt the effects of this. I went to small businesses today in my community. They're getting crushed by taxes, by regulations, all the things that socialist-like systems cause, things that the Democrat Socialists of America are implementing in Albany. I served in the Albany legislature. I know these kinds of things. We thought, oh, they could never pass these. They were always stopped in the Senate. But now they have veto-proof majorities. And the governor is feckless and weak. And she endorses a guy like Mamdani. I have to say, I got to give credit to the Democrat chair of New York State. He still has yet to endorse Mamdani because he knows it's a disaster for the Democrat Party. This will be a disaster for New York. The taxpayers should be much more afraid of anything that Mamdani would do than President Trump saying, I want to impose DEI and take that type of stuff away, go back to a merit-based system in the city of New York and the state. That's the problem.
Making headlines recently, President has been able to accomplish a lot in the Middle East. You obviously believe Mamdani would take New York City back. And I want to pull up your post from earlier today when you say New Yorkers deserve better than a terrorist sympathizer. And Mamdani's anti-Semitism isn't new. Want to point out, Mamdani has said it pains him to be seen in opposition to the Jewish New Yorkers, and he knows and loves and are a key part to the city. If elected, do you believe, is there any common ground possible between Mamdani and Trump?
I hope so if he's elected, because it's going to be the end of New York, which is going to be tragic for the people that live in the city and the people in upstate New York who also rely on the city for its strong revenues, you know, the financial industry and so many other important things that come out of New York City. This is going to be a disaster. I mean, Trump will work with anyone. Look, you know, he's even working with Hamas to try to, you know, release the hostages. But I'll tell you, this guy scares me. He's a phony. He's a fraud. He doesn't answer any questions. He's a snake oil salesman. As I said, I've heard all this before. I've been around politics long enough. He is, you know, he's a slick salesman. And he really knows how to skirt around the issues. And he really doesn't give anyone any real solutions that are going to work for New York City.
The support is there when you take a look at the polls. The mayoral debate, obviously, tomorrow. Do you feel Republicans have done enough in this race?
You know, I don't know what the Republicans can do. They're so outnumbered in New York City. I mean, there's really not many chances for Republicans to take any kind of wins there. Usually all the races in New York City, except for Staten Island, are really about the primary, and the Democrats fighting it out in the primary. So we really haven't had much of a chance. But, you know, we haven't really been fighting in a lot of cases and going into tough areas. You know, there's been some standouts like Vicky Palladino, who's gone into areas and really stood up for the voters and the taxpayers. And I think that's why you see success from people like Vicky and a few others. But it's tough in New York City. And our state education department, the mayoral control over the city have caused people to have a dislike for America. These people don't like America. They don't like what we stand for. They don't believe in our founders. They believe in authoritarian systems based on communism. And the anti-Semitism is the part that is also really concerning, you know, coming out of Mamdani. I mean, he just, you know, the foreign money, he's had, what, over $13,000 in foreign money that hasn't been accounted for coming into the race. Now, that's not unusual. You see these types of, you know, gaming the system issues happening in New York City a lot. Look, New York City is a lot different than upstate New York, but you know, New York City is important to the state, and I think people are really nervous. My friends in New York City, many of them are thinking about selling their condos, getting out of their homes, permanently leaving the state of New York. And not all of them are really wealthy. Many of them are, but not all of them are. They don't want to see the demise of New York and everything they've built in their lives come to a halt with a guy like this in charge if he's able to actually get what he wants done through the city council.
Representative, before I let you go, I'm curious if you think New York is representative of something greater nationwide. You and AOC, I mentioned, are part of the same New York delegation, but what can you say about the so-called squad of which she is part and the spread of progressive politics nationwide as we are looking at more and more races? This movement is clearly picking up steam.
Well, she isn't a progressive. She's a democratic socialist, which means they derived their ideology from Marxism. That's what she is. And they have steam in some areas. But President Trump won pretty decisively last year, winning all 7 swing states and doing much better than he even did in his first term in terms of the electoral vote. But they're picking up in certain enclaves, certain cities. But you're seeing what's happening in those cities. They're struggling. They're losing population. People are moving, to red states because they want to see their taxes lower. They want to see, borders secure. They want to see safe streets. They want to see their children be able to, go to school without fear of crime. And these are the things that people are looking for. They also just want common sense. And you're not going to get common sense out of AOC. She's very similar to Mamdani in a way, though. She's very charming, which, he seems to have charisma as well. But they are snake oil salesmen. They are not selling anything that works. They are trying to manipulate the public into saying, we got the answers when they don't. Everything they're proposing has been tried and failed miserably throughout not just our nation's history, but the history of the world.
A lot of important topics discussed with you. I'm sure that they will certainly come up tomorrow for the mayoral debate. Representative Claudia Tenney, thank you for joining us tonight on the National News Desk. Appreciate your time.
Thanks so much.